Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining today, he's a platinum selling musician, inventor, artist, and entrepreneur. It's Chad Gerber. How are you doing today, Chad?
I am fantastic. A little hungry, but otherwise fantastic. How are you?
Doing good. We are so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what did you like doing growing up?
Oh man. So I grew up in Billings, Montana, which is basically it's kind of a blue collar industrial town. And it's a bit disconnected from everything. So I liked to do a lot of weird stuff, really, like you would in any town. Not necessarily like, throwing rocks off of bridges or anything, but at an early age, I found myself drawn to music and ripping apart electronics. So,
Oh,
and like I did the normal stuff with like friends and baseball and exploring ditches for, things. But for the most part, I kind of kept gravitating around electronics, RF type stuff, radios, scanners, music. My mother made me start taking guitar lessons when I was about 8. Um, and then at some point the music part clicked, but the electronics part was still just like a passion thing. So other than that though, like your usual stuff, riding bicycles and jumping my friends and falling off of roofs, um you know that old stuff.
typical kid thing is falling off a roof.
Typical kid things. I was a bit wild, but I never broke any bones. I don't think I broke anyone else's bones,
Well,
so it was
that's
good.
good.
It was a good childhood, you know what I mean?
More going on the ripping apart electronics. What was your
Mm.
go-to electronic to rip apart?
TV remotes. When I was really, really little, it was TV remotes. I also liked to make vinyl players out of like a pencil and like a vinyl record and a needle, that kind of thing. But I like taking apart TV remotes and calculators, old crystal police scanners, walkie-talkies, any of the fun stuff, I guess. I never really got into like taking apart microwaves or anything because they're just big and I'm like, I don't know what that does. But yeah, my parents would let me, I think as long as I wasn't, doing anything stupid outside, really, they were like, yeah, just take stuff apart. It's broken anyways. And I'd, blow the circuits in the house periodically, plugging things in. But I thought that was just kind of what you do when you're a kid.
That I think that's a first for me. I mean, you have those typical where kids will just break things and things like that,
Yeah.
but it sounds like you had like a mission with each item. Like I'm thinking, I mean, who
No,
knows?
it's true. No, it's true. It drove me nuts that I didn't understand how TV remotes worked. And and this is back before we just had information at our fingertips, you know what I mean? But
Mhm.
like I knew it had a little bulb on it. And I was like, why does it have a bulb if there's no light? But it's an infrared light. So like I just didn't understand that. So what I just started doing is really for a very long time experimenting with how far it reflects, the distances, and then I started reflecting, trying to like off my eyeball. Is that going to be enough for the TV to get the sensors? And um, so that one took a while. And then once I didn't entirely figure it out because I could not see the light, but I knew it was something to do with a light pattern. And then I moved on to, yeah, like if my parents were like, hey, this is a broken phone, it doesn't work anymore, then I would rip the magnets out of it. And I have no idea what I was doing. I think I was just psychotic. My mom thought I was gonna be a serial killer. And I
Oh,
was like, I'm just taking things apart. It's what kids do.
you talked about starting guitar lessons at a young age. What music
Yeah.
was an inspiration for you, or what did you enjoy growing up listening to?
Um. So when I was growing up, we did not really listen to music at all. Uh, like really ever. And there's not really any specific reason as to why. But what would happen is that my mom would sometimes let me listen to like public radio, like classical music and jazz music and stuff like that. So I found myself listening to a lot of that, um, which is then that rolled into starting classical music.
Mhm.
But then it started to be like oldies radio, whatever's playing. So I started to kind of just turn on the oldies radio and play along with like a lot of rock classics and stuff, and just try to like do my own leads and supplemental melody lines and things like that. So it's really eclectic. I grew up in this rural area, so there's really no live music scene, nowhere to go kind of check music out. And when I got to high school, I started sneaking into concerts, snuck into like a Tool concert, and it's like sneak backstage to try to meet managers and get yelled at, and then eventually some of these people like let me come onto the circus, I guess.
Did you ever want to like go outside of the Montana area to go see concerts and things like that? Or you were happy with like
No, I
thinking
wanted
about
out.
the rural area?
I wanted out. It was a cool place to grow up, but I knew pretty quick that what I wanted to do just did not exist there.
Mhm.
So so when I basically like music videos and MTV, any of that kind of stuff, I was just like, how do I get there? Like it was a different universe to me. Um, and so a lot of then my mission became like trying to find people, email people, sneak into concerts, and just trying to be like, how do I get into this freak show and get out? And then I finally connected some dots, and then at like 17, people started flying me out to play guitar and stuff.
Wow.
And then I started to it started in Miami. So I was like 17 in Miami doing music, and I kind of got to see like, okay, getting like, this is how it works. So it was like a bittersweet thing where you grow up in your area and you're like, oh, I love it and it's great. But I was like, I will die if I do not get out of here and do what I'm supposed to be doing. So yeah, then I uprooted and finally moved at like, I don't know when it was, 21, 22, something like that. I just came to LA on some credit cards.
Sometimes we're asked that dream job. Was music always in that vision plan for you, or did you have that other dream job that you were curious about?
No, music was it. Like for a while, I wanted to be a professional baseball player because it was very easy for me and I enjoyed it a lot, but I did not have the mental capacity for the game. So I found myself playing baseball and like loving it and all that. And all I could think about was, when I get home, I can't wait to try this melody out and I'm going to write something about this. So there's like a point where I was like, okay, clearly that's taking everything over. So, and then after I accepted it, I was like, this 100% is what I'm going to do. Um, no matter what I got to do it. So then it came down to where am I going to move to do it? And it was between LA, New York, Miami, and then Dallas, because I knew a couple of people in Dallas, Texas. And then LA, I sent some stuff to LA, and the people here were like, you should come do this. So like, all right. So I just popped in. But yeah, there's always like, this is what I have to do. And people would laugh at me and be like, you know how many people can do the music? I'm like, yeah, I don't know, man. I'm still gonna try.
Exactly. I mean, you think about all the people nowadays, a lot of people are trying to get their name
Yeah.
out there, and it's just
Yeah.
competition galore. And
It's
you just
insane.
have to have that lucky hit or
Mm-hmm.
be able to find that fan base that shares it 20,000 times to get it out
Yeah.
to a broad audience.
Yeah. Like it's gotten very weird. The other thing I've noticed is that, like, for me, it was music or die. So it doesn't matter what, if you plot me anywhere in time, I would have probably been a street busker or, like we're playing a lute wearing tights or something like that. But now a lot of people, it seems like the majority of them first want the recognition and fame and connection and all
Mhm.
that, then the art. But for me, I was like, no, this is like art. And then I need to try to figure out how to build upon that. So that helped me a lot to keep like a foundational piece of what it was I was trying to do versus chasing platform fads and things like that. Um, so like my goal was like, I want to be, a respectable musician and do all these different things. And if people know about it and know me, great. If not, I don't, it's fine. Um, so I think the landscape's totally weird now because I don't really, I have no idea how to know. But I don't think very many people are really in it for the passion for the art versus what's my gimmick so that I can get kind of some hits on TikTok.
I actually can agree with that from an outsider's. Like you can definitely
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not doing this to be famous. I mean, I'm like down here at the level, but
Yeah.
I'm more about the craft, and I can tell
Right.
basically you are about the craft of the music and the
Absolutely.
inspiration in wanting to share your love for
Yeah.
it. I mean, just looking at
Yep.
your room that you're in, if you're listening
Yeah.
to this, you got to go to the video, but just the room that you're in, it shows that you
Mhm.
care about it. Going to
Absolutely.
LA is a pretty expensive trip, let's just
Oh
say.
yeah. Yeah.
Was it hard to start out in music without maybe did you have that
Oh,
education wanting to go there, or was it just finding that gig and get going?
it was scratching and clawing and like using my teeth to get in. So I maxed out. I basically paid for, gas on a credit card and and then got a deposit down on a just horrible apartment with like
Oh,
gangs around it and everything else. And but it was enough to be here.
yeah.
And then I was like, and like in my family, even though a lot of them they're like, I don't have a clue what you're doing. I was raised with this thing of like, but if you're gonna do something, like, someone's always working harder than you. There's always somebody more talented than you. There's always somebody with more resources than you. So like, you got to fight. You got to fight for this. So when I showed up, it was like, I knew one person in LA, and it was just kind of like, hey, where are you at? And do you know anybody here? And he had been here
Hmm.
for like 6 months or something. And it was just a matter of like going somewhere and being like, hi, my name's Chad. What's your name? And weirdly enough, the very first day that I went out, I ran into a then rapper named Aloe Black, who I met at something, and he was like, my name's Aloe, and what do you do? And I was like, I'm a musician. I just got here. And we struck up a conversation, and the next thing I know, he's like, why don't you come and record at my place? And we started kind of collaborating on music. And then, I made I'd call clubs and everybody else. I just grinded. I wasn't interested in the scene for the hangout aspect, though
Hmm.
that was fun. But I was like, no, I want to play at the Viper Room and on the Sunset Strip, and I got to build this up and get the labels talking to me. So it was very much like attack and go out of the gate. And my social life probably suffered a bit, but it was worth it. And ultimately, that's kind of the only way to get through it. Most people that go after it, I can't speak for like New York or other cities, but here it's about a year and a half, and then they go, it's too hard, and then they
Yeah.
and then they leave. But for me, it was like, I have no choice. There is no, that's it. So either I make this happen, or I'm going to be 85 years old still playing on the Sunset Strip. So it's like, there is no plan B. I guess for me, that was the first thing. It's like, there is no plan B. This is it. And then once I accepted that, it was like, let's just do what we got to do, and then get it done and be patient, you know?
Was there any of the beginning gigs that you got that still play a memorable part in your journey that's like, wow, I can't believe
Yeah.
I'm here at least, but it's the start to something better.
Yeah. Like the crappy gigs, right? Like the dumb ones.
I'm
Yeah.
not gonna I'm not gonna
There was
comment.
a lot. Most of them were terrible. What's weird is that like, so I had all these different gigs around LA and stuff. Playing the Viper Room was a really big deal. I was really excited to play there the first time, just because it's like iconic, and to be on a stage that like Paul McCartney's been in here, and like Johnny Cash, all these people, right? Um, but the weird part is, this is probably like another life lesson thing. The misadventures are the ones that I always remember, and the good stuff is always like, yeah, that was a good show. But then there's the one where the one dude threatened to throw like a beer bottle at me. There's the other one where this person did this. There's the other one where these people threatened to like beat up the band in the parking lot. Like, I find that those, which at the time are massive failures, like, where you go home and you're just like, what am I doing with my life?
Mhm.
But then years later, it's like, it's so weird. But you look back and you're like, I'm so glad that happened, because I've had a million cool shows, but the ones that are off the rails are the ones that like I can sit and just laugh about,
Yeah.
when I think over it. But I'll say this: the one that always keeps coming back to me, though, other than all the failures and things not working and people yelling at us and whatever, is that I went to this show. I did it as a joint bill, and I forgot the name of this band, but um, it's the tiniest stage in the world, and the band that was playing, they did like 70s rock, but there were two twin brothers from San Francisco, and they both were, honestly, they might have been like 6'8", each of them, and they kind of look like Hulk Hogan. And um and so when their band started playing, they're really good too. They looked like giant Hulk Hogan animatronics on a tiny little stage with huge hair.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I don't know what I'm witnessing, but this is the greatest band in the world. And then I don't know what happened to them. Probably became software engineers. I don't know.
What would you say your music style is? Like if someone had to kind of describe the music you create even now, what
Yeah.
would that style be?
I mean, I have my own names for it. A lot of people call it cinematic. No matter what I do, everybody seems to come back to being like, it would be great in a movie. But I think for me, my foundational piece, whether I'm doing like pop music or like, I like electronic music, because the way I see electronic music is that I wanted to be a classical composer at
Mhm.
one point, like way back, but it's nobody like really composes new music. You just play dead people's music. So electronic music is kind of like that. You can make it however you want, and it doesn't have to fit into a mold. So underground electronic music is like what I love. But most people, even with that, they'll end up saying like most of my stuff sounds cinematic, or like it goes and it'd be good for movies and stuff like that. And I have scored some of that. But underground electronic, um, emotional, sometimes dark, sometimes just moody, I guess.
Does your music play any effect with something that you've gone through, or is it a
Oh yeah.
reflection of like
Oh
your
yeah.
emotions or things that you've experienced?
Yeah, it's 100% therapy. So if I'm doing major label stuff, that's predominantly guitar or some like lyric writing. And when I do guitar stuff, it's, more fitting it for what we're working on. It's a very collaborative thing. But if it's my Woodrow Gerber personal stuff, it's
Mhm.
100% like therapy session, hard times, good times, what am I doing right now in this chunk of my life? But yeah, it's a diary. It's so yeah, Woodrow Gerber is absolutely a soundtrack to my life. And then the projects that actually like pay, because underground music isn't exactly a bundle of money. The label stuff, I go in there and I'm trying to like elevate the track and the song that we're doing, and but my personal stuff is 100% raw.
So that kind of music that's more emotional,
Yeah.
are the lyrics something like if a family member or a friend's heard it, they maybe didn't know about you or didn't know you were going through that, and it was kind of like a conversational starter that
Mm.
you're able to express more?
Like, you mean, would they be able to pick it out and be like, what is that?
Yeah, like would they be asking like didn't know this about you, or what's the meaning behind these lyrics, kind of getting to know you a little bit more, or even like people that
Yeah.
are your fans, they kind of are not questioning, but they're wanting to know more about the meaning behind your lyrics.
Yeah, yeah. That's a great question. So actually, here's what happened um, and I'll still write lyrics and stuff for like the label projects. But what I found with my stuff was that, and I also go by how I'm feeling, but I kind of started to phase out doing vocals or lyrics in my electronic music
Mhm,
because I didn't like how it was shaping the narrative for the listener. And I wanted it to be like, I'm pouring out this sound and vibe because of what's going on in my life,
mhm,
but I don't want to tell the listener what it's about because I want them to attach their meaning to it instead. So I actually started to kind of phase out the lyrics. I think the first Woodrow Gerber album was all lyrics. So it was like talking about just different things, relationships and all that. But as I went on, I just kind of phased out the vocal element because, again, going kind of back to classical music, I liked the feeling of just letting the brain subconsciously lock onto it, and people
mhm.
would then feed it into their life as their soundtrack, versus like if you're on a drive and this song's about partying all night, you know, and you're on your way to a funeral, you're not going to want to really listen to that track.
Yeah.
So I basically kind of I phased out lyrics, and I go back and forth on it all the time. Like I'm in pre-production on the next record, my own like
Mhm.
underground record, and I keep going back and forth. I'm like, maybe I should do another album with lyrics and vocals on it again. But I don't know. It's a never-ending battle in my head between exactly that.
Is there a song that, for someone that's listening that's never heard your music before,
Yeah.
that is a good go-to to kind of really understand your personality in the song?
Ooh, like the personality that I present to the world, or my actual the one that I hide from the world.
Well, whichever one that you think is a good starting point that kind of will get them kind of going on, ooh, okay, I want to know more. I want to listen to more.
Yeah. I'm terrible at answering that type of a question because like the last album I did is a cyberwave album. So it's a
Oh.
horror cyberwave album. And so it's got like synthesizers and 80s vibes, and it's kind of dark,
Mhm,
and it's more about like a time in my mind, like environmentally where I was when I was a kid, and like soundtracking essentially a soundtrack a chunk of my life from back in the day. But then I'd say the last two records are the ones I would recommend. Liquid Data, which is like absolutely chill, and then the follow-up record is completely a bipolar take on it, which then goes into the cyberwave, which is called Night at the Metra. So I don't know, but then like my fans, they really like this album called XO. It has a lot of just variety to it, and it's a huge album. I think there's like 20 tracks on it or something. Um, but there is one song called Find, I think it's called Find My Way, Find Your Way, Find Someone's Way. And that is, I feel like one of the best songs I've made that kind of really connects a moment in time that I was experiencing, and it came out exactly how I wanted it. So, man, that doesn't answer your question at all. But thanks for listening, everybody.
Well, you gave everyone a few different pieces to
Yeah,
listen
what am I, a politician over here? I'm like, geez,
everyone's gonna basically listen to this whole entire episode, and then they're gonna go to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, wherever. They're gonna listen to every single one that you just mentioned.
Oh man, that's the problem. Is I'm like, I just vomited it out, and because I get people that are like, I love this one song, it's just phenomenal, and I'm like, that's fantastic. And I don't tell them, I'm like, I hate that song. I absolutely hated the way it turned out. It was like wrestling, wrestling with something, and then you finally kind of get it, sort of, and then that's the one that people love to death, and that's the one that I skip every single time it ever shows up in my shuffle.
I always get worried when I interview musicians because I will say a song that I like of theirs, and they'll be like, "Why that one?" And I go, "Well, it came," and then I tell them the reasoning I like it, and they're like, "Oh." But that shows how every listener picks a certain song because of a completely different reason than the next person. And that's so special about music is I could listen to one song of yours, another person can listen to the same song. We could both have two different opinions on it, or we can relate or reflect in different ways. And that's what's so powerful about music.
Exactly. And that's what I love about it. I love it when people are like, I love this one song, I guess one is called like Chalky Eyes, and that was from another band I was in, but it's electronic based song. And I like the song too, but these people, they're like, this is like my favorite song ever. And I cannot relate to that. But that is why I got rid of it in the first place, because it's almost in a way like I have this thing floating around my head, and it means a lot to me because I'm experiencing it, but I need to get rid of it, and hopefully somebody else will take it, and whatever they make out of it, I'm thrilled to death. So even the songs that are really the worst songs I've ever made, and someone's like, I love that song, it actually makes me feel fantastic, because I'm like, man, I'm glad you love it. I hate it, but man, I'm thrilled somebody loves it.
With music nowadays, COVID did play a big hit for a lot of musicians with dates being cut because travel. How did that play an effect for you?
Oh man, that sent me into a psychological spiral, really. I was about to go play Lollapalooza, Brazil, and then I was supposed to do like Tomorrowland in Europe and all these cool things, right? And it just was all like, it's exploded. But what it did was it kind of like, I feel like it like reformatted my brain. It partitioned it into 2 or 3 different pieces, where I was like, okay, well, the world is on hold, music is on hold. I can either like just eat pizza and play video games until this is over, or maybe I'll kind of like dust off some of my other creative endeavors that I just assumed would never matter. And that was like the technology aspect of it. So I mean, and through music over the years, you really, if you want to survive in the game, you have to be good at just adapting and pivoting constantly. Like the second that you try to go down with your ship, like if you're like, I love rock and roll till the end, there will be an end and you will die with it, but you can adapt. You know what I mean? So I always try to take things like that. So when that stuff hit the fan and I lost huge dates, all kinds of just really cool stuff. So the first thing I was like, well, I'm going to make my new album that's going to I'm going to get all of this out, how I feel right now. That was Liquid Data. So that's my COVID album. And I made that like in the first chunk of COVID. And then once that was done, I was like, I was still working on some different tracks with different groups and collaborating remotely, which was just, it's miserable to do, which is why Meloscene came to be. But I was like, I just need to explore these other things in my head that are just fantasies that are now becoming applicable into the world, because the world is more disconnected in COVID, and it was getting more disconnected even before COVID in a way. So I started to explore like these pipe dream ideas that I would just fantasize about on tour and stuff while traveling. And I found that I started to get 1,000 times more creative fulfillment from that than what I was with music, because music started to become exceptionally formulaic due to just social media and streaming and the nature of it, where everybody was just trying to really hit a mark. And with this other stuff, I was like, there is no format or mark. It's like repainting, or just like, it's like orchestrating something. So I yeah, so it was like, mentally it was an extremely complicated year. I was up and down constantly. One day I'm like through the moon, this is up to the moon, this is great. Next day I'm like, I'm in a nightmare. But to I chose to try to, I use the situation, um because I was like, if I don't choose how I'm going to ride this thing, I will totally fall apart. So I was like, first thing I do, I need to get my brain in check. I need to get my physical state in check. I need to get like everything. So I became like militant, really militant, like wake up, work out, do this, focus, quiet time, do this, that, like, and I found that like it helped me to get through it. And then it also opened up about a million different things that would have never existed otherwise. So COVID, I have a mixed feelings about it, but essentially it opened the rest of my brain wide open, and I am grateful for that.
I love how you mentioned adaptability, because I think that's a topic or a situation that everyone had to go through. And even besides the music industry, you had companies changing their platforms, athletes changing how did they train. You have people like in podcasting create and kind of envision, how do we do interviews now? Like the power of Zoom came about. But it's so true, especially with musicians, because social media now is a big platform for musicians. How do they be able to connect with their fans in a way that they can't? You have Instagram lives, content clubs, not content clubs, but like
group. It sounds like an app, actually. Is that? Check out my new app.
There's adaptability right there. I just came up with something new.
You just made a freaking platform, content.
But even with the change where CDs to streaming platforms, it's like that kind of changed how musicians.
Yeah.
If you had to describe your journey and how you adapt in one word about yourself, what would that one word be?
Resolve. I think. Hopefully that's the right one. Usually I tie it with unbreakable resolve. I take great pride in being able to take a beating.
Okay.
Like I feel like in life, if you can take a beating, far more than you can lash out, like that doesn't really do anything. If you can take a beating, you're gonna win. So as long as you kind of know, this sucks, this hurts, but it's not forever. It's going to be for a window of time. So for me, it's all about having unbreakable resolve, where things are hitting the fan, stuff's falling apart, wheels are coming off, and it's like I can either go into the fetal position or take a deep breath, analyze the situation, and then you know what, let's take those tires that popped off, let's sell them off individually and make a profit, and then let's take that engine apart and turn into something else. Like, it's, to me, life is Legos. Every bad situation can be reworked into something else. It's not fun, it sucks, and it's hard, but the other option is you just roll over and die.
So, but doesn't that kind of go with what you just talked about earlier, where you don't take, there's no giving up. When you went to LA, you were going to do anything to make it work out there, because there was no reason there was no going back. And kind of this situation, taking the beating, you're going to fight, claw your way through that obstacle, because you know that getting onto the other side, it's going to be worth the reward in a way.
Absolutely. And you come out stronger. That's the thing, is everybody, the second they start getting, life starts kicking them down or whatever, it's a natural instinctual thing to be like, okay, enough. But the truth is, if you stick it out, you come out far stronger. And then the next time that something of the same magnitude hits you, you're already ready for it. But then if it's a bigger version, you still got some edge on it. Like, everything that hits you, man, I heard the craziest thing today about the difference between villains and heroes, and I feel like this applies to it, is that the difference between a hero and a villain, they always have the same backstory, where the villain typically has like a scar or something to imply that they had trauma and childhood problems, and the hero is usually had childhood or some sort of a trauma. The difference is the hero says, I'm going to choose to not let this happen to anyone else. And the villain says, I am going to give back what the world has dealt to me. And everybody gets to choose it. And for me, and again, I'm a bit masochistic. I'm like, the villain side's easy. It's easy to like to reciprocate pain and all that. But if you can like harvest it and channel it, then you get stronger from it, you know? So resolve, take a beating. It doesn't last forever. And if it does, you know, eventually you'll be unconscious and don't know the difference anyways.
So we talked about your music journey. I always ask this question to every musician. Are you a fan of making music videos, or do you prefer being in the studio creating the songs more?
You know, I love making music videos. I've been making them on like home video stuff since I was a little kid. I thought it was
Okay.
the coolest thing in the world. And it's an excuse at the end of the day to just be stupid and hang out with people.
Yeah.
So they're really hard to make, especially if you're trying to hit a certain mark. So I don't make them, I don't really jump in them like I used to, but I love it because I find it's an excuse for me to try really stupid ideas out and see what happens. I mean, the last video I did, and this is before pandemic stuff went crazy, but we shot it inside of a camper and like it was honestly probably like 100 something degrees in there, so we're just like pouring sweat, having to take breaks, go outside and like towel off. But it was like, it's so much fun, man. Like, so I love making music videos.
Something I mentioned at the very beginning is platinum selling musician. Having that title, what does that mean to you?
Man, well, it means a lot to me on a personal like checklist goal thing, and also means that I can open more doors. So for me, it was like, again, coming from rural Montana as a kid, doing music and anything really was next to it. I would have I mean, it sounds stupid. I really would have had an easier time probably being an astronaut or a fighter pilot or something. So for like the platinum record for me is like you did it. Like I could just die tomorrow, and at least on my checklist, I got that. But professionally, the biggest thing for me is that it allows me to open up different avenues of creativity. Because music industry isn't really based upon your credentials, like academically or anything like that. So you can't be like, I've got 7 masters. Nobody cares. You have to have like gold, platinum, Grammys, something to open up the next level of stuff. So for me, it was like a check mark on my goal list, but then also like, okay, now I can open up this entire massive book of the next phase. So it was like it was a key to open up a bunch of stuff. So yeah, it was a big deal for me.
I would be the same way. You get to that first goal and then you're like, okay, what's next? What can I go after next? Like,
yeah, like and it also makes you feel like you're not insane. Like that was the other thing, is like, you do this for a long time and you're like, man, do I suck? Am I just around people that think I'm good and I really suck? You kind of finally hit a mark where you're like, okay, I think I actually sort of do know what I'm doing, maybe. But but for me, yes. So for me, like, I'm not a huge like awards person, but if it's on my checklist of like, I always like to hit goal marks, even if they're arbitrary. So yeah, hitting that one is like for me, it's like a video game. It unlocks. Now I'm like, got it. No, I unlocked the next level. So I like it.
Looking at, you talked about Lala, oh my God, I can't even say it.
Lollapalooza.
Lollapalooza Tomorrowland. Is there a dream venue or event that you hope to be at and be a part of and share your love for music to the audience?
I would still like to return back to Lollapalooza. I think the one on my list that's been on my list for a while, though, is probably Coachella, just because locally it's a thing. However, the industry keeps changing where now people go to Lollapalooza and they don't care at all about the music. They just take like selfies and like do like social media stuff. So everything keeps getting weird. Every time I'm like, I'm going to do this, but then like culture changes to the point where I'm like, oh, that sounds stupid. So I would have to say, and I'm not joking and I'm not trying to be funny, but I would love to do a performance on a moon resort. I would love them to make a resort on the moon and do a festival on the moon. And at that rate, I'll be like 135 when that happens.
Could you imagine the tickets just to get to the moon for that?
Yes, they'd be like, it's an $800,000 ticket.
I literally, because your your paycheck for that is so much that we just gotta 1,000% markup. And
my
you know
gosh,
what?
dude.
People are going to pay that because they're like, I was on the moon for that one concert, that one festival.
That's what I mean.
Check
There's
mark.
only one Woodstock.
That
There's only one Woodstock. No, we need Moonstock.
you talked about like how culture has changed. I always say I'm like a huge fan of those EDM festivals. I haven't
Yeah.
been to one, but
Yeah.
people that know me, I mean, obviously you can see I love neon lights and stuff. And
Me
if
too.
I could,
Them.
this would be a rave, and then you would have like a panic attack
Yeah.
in the lights behind me. But I just look at it and I'd probably be the same way where I might not know who is playing, but the
Yeah.
atmosphere is more important to me
Yep.
because that is just something I enjoy. So when you were saying about the culture, I'm like, I'm probably that person that's going to be like, I need a photo. I need to say
Right.
I'm here.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and then I would be like, okay, Shazam, who's playing right now?
Right. Who is this? Yeah. And there's, and again, and it's not from a place of like, everyone sucks. Like Deadmau5, he basically said, I'm not playing any more stuff. But what I'm saying is like culture changes. And again, artists of any kind, they either go, okay, where are we headed now? Or they go, this is dumb. And I'm not that person. But if it's not feeding my creative soul of music, then I'm just going to like pivot, and that's where like in my platform, Meloscene, it's more like, how do I facilitate what people want now and just change it a bit so the artist is also getting fulfilled by it as well. But really at the end of the day, like neon lights and all that, my dream is to basically just live and exist in a cyberpunk world. Like if I had a choice, I would just live in a future cyberpunk place.
I guess we'll probably be at the same place because I'd be the same way.
Exactly. So like we
add it
need
to our
like
check marks.
we need like the bionic, like the eye thing. Did you see that what was that anime, that cyberpunk anime that was on Netflix? Man, it's phenomenal. Forget the name.
I'm probably the worst person to ask about anime. I'm gonna be honest.
That's totally fine. This was it was cyberpunk. That's the name of it. It's based on the video game. But anyways, like it's like features. Yeah, I'm a sucker for that stuff. So
when you talk about those things, I have something in my Amazon cart that's literally goggles, but it's like neon light goggles. I saw it in a YouTube video and I saved it. I told my friends, I'm gonna buy this. I have no reason to have it. I just want it.
You have every reason.
It's only $70.
You have every reason. I just saw a helmet, a cyberpunk helmet that you like put on, and it's the entire faceplate is like that Daft Punk black thing. I know. I was like, how can I buy that and just wear it everywhere? Like
I wear it to work. Like if I'm working at home, no one needs to see me. I mean, I can do whatever I want. Basically.
During COVID, I wore the symbiote Spider-Man mask everywhere. Like I literally went to stores wearing my symbiote Spider-Man, and then I wore like the hoodie, so it's kind of tapping into different types of Spider-Man. But yeah, I'm a whatever.
You talked about Meloscene, which is something outside of your music. How did that get created? And what's the big mission you have for that company?
Man. Okay, so it got created. I think a lot of it was from growing up, again, talking on 10-meter radios and 11-meter radios. And I was in a rural area. So I would talk to people in like Jamaica and Australia. And it was just this idea that humans exist in different spaces and times, but we can still be together. Even like right now, we're together, but not really.
Yeah.
Then it was like, how can I make it better? And it really was kind of born out of, so it's like this concept kind of bouncing around. But then I was like, in a studio, majority of your creativity and stuff when you're making music comes from not speaking. And Zoom, just a two-dimensional format, it's just really hard to like get that magical energy thing. So it kind of became this thing of like, how do I put us where we can all go into the same studio wherever we are in the world and just be together? Because studios are fun. Like it's just a blast being in the studio, and that's why music comes out of it, because you're having fun. If you're not, you're in the wrong studio. So it was like, how do I do this? And then I just kind of started to piece it together from all of my, at the time, useless knowledge of electronics and circuitry and audio and everything else. And it really kind of kicked off because I was having meetings with Gibson Guitars about some different projects I wanted to work on. And I was like, and I'm going to do a VR studio thing. I'm going to build this device in 2025. And they were kind of like, well, wait, we want to know more about that. And it just snowballed. So it's like, yeah, let me get back to you. So I called up like my patent attorney and then called up these other people, and it exploded. And then what I found is that this device opened up all of my cyber dreams to be reality, of like being together. Since I was gone as a kid, if I was like on planes playing music, or if I was touring and stuff like that, I was missing out on things with friends or family and all that. And I was like, well, what if I didn't have to be that way anymore? What if I could make it so that I'm a part of the evolution of just being together as humans? What if we could remove space and we could all be together to the point of where our subconscious lets go of the fact that it's not actually us together, it's a representation. So I kind of just started to see, well, that fits with this. And that actually ties into this other project that I never thought would be a thing. And then this ties into this. So just kind of like snowballed. So the first foundational piece is essentially it's a Web3 music platform for the future of what music is. It doesn't it allows for musicians to be more than a musician, because most musicians now, they animate, they make these different things that supplement their music, but you can't experience it in the real world, and here you can. So like it's sort of the, I don't know what to call the future artist, but it's what art is about to become. Everybody now is a musician, everybody now is a comedian, everybody now is an entertainer, everybody's everything now. But there are people out there that want to combine it into a cohesive experience, and there's no way to do it. So this facilitates the evolution of this next phase of what we could be. And so it all kind of started to pop out of that. And then from there, it spiderwebs in to just a million different mixed reality experiences and live events and festivals. And it just kind of like all with the goal of getting every ounce of creativity out of an artist and into the world, no longer bound by the laws of physics.
Are you proud of what you've been able to accomplish with it? And especially during the time that we are in, where technology is growing, technology is getting more and more powerful, and you're creating something that is for the future.
I think I will be proud. I'm proud of like milestones. So like building a prototype was ridiculously hard. Even just educating people to the point of understanding what it is I'm even trying to build was really hard. So those parts give me like, you know, like when I first plugged it in and it was like working, and I was just like, that was, I felt amazing. But my problem is I legitimately struggle to ever be in the presence of any given situation. So the second it's out of the box and I turn it on, I'm like, yes. And then 30 seconds later, I'm 10 years ahead of what the fifth version needs to look like and what needs to be adjusted already. So I don't really, I don't ever, it sounds horrible, I don't really ever enjoy anything, because I'm always like, get them like, yeah, okay, so what I need to do is, you know, I think a lot of people are like that. But I'm proud of, I think I'm proud of how excited artists are about it, which I was not prepared for that. So like when I debuted it at CES in Las Vegas, I had a lot of musicians, like programmers and tech people, who were like, well, I'm a bass player, I'm a piano player. And some of them, which I was not expecting this, were like tearing up about it, because they felt so trapped, because like I was in a band, then they all moved, or I used to collaborate with my friend, but he now lives in a different country. And I was like, well, that doesn't matter anymore. And so it was a really emotional thing to like see people, almost like you can have that light, that artistic light that you were snuffing out, it can be back on, and it can exist in here, and it can exist forever in this space. So for me, that was probably the biggest one, is seeing how people, musicians, are like, this is how I continue, and you know, my soul will live, kind of thing.
Something our listeners like is to really dive more deep into our guests. Talk about stuff that you enjoy doing outside of your career. What do you do on a daily basis? If it's a weekend, you have off time, what do you like to do that maybe fans or people don't know about you?
Man, honestly, I guess the only thing I could probably throw out there is video games when I have time. But the problem is I love creating, and I love like absorbing things that can help me to increase my creative palette. So I love going out to, if I can go to art galleries, that's fantastic. Or obviously I'd say the beach is probably my reset zone. I'll just, usually at night, I absolutely hate the day. I hate the sun. I usually try to do everything at night. So I'll go to like the beach at night. There's nobody there, but for the most part, I'm obsessed and I'm addicted to wanting to push the innovation and creativity of myself. I love doing it, and I always have. So, I love movies, and I love video games if I have the time. But otherwise, I usually, if I'm in a different city or country and I have a day off, I'll be like, well, I want to hit the museum because I want to absorb these artists' ideas and see what
Mhm.
I can do with that, So, um, I mean, I love everything that, if I have time for it, but going to like sports stuff is fun. But otherwise, man, I'm lost in my head a lot and I like it. But movies, I'd say movies. I love movies and oh, comedy. Comedy's my go-to. That's like the one creative medium that I haven't dabbled in and it's not messed up for me. So like if I'm watching a movie, I love movies, but I'm like, oh, that'd be cool. I love the score on this part. That would have been cool if they did this. Comedy is the only thing that I'll go to like comedy shows and stuff like that. I have no attachment to it and I'm unoffendable and I just absolutely love comedy. Long answer. That was long. Short answer is comedy. I should have just been like, comedy. Next question.
The final question I'll ask you for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Just don't. Just don't. I would, man, that's like you just asked me like what's the meaning of life? That's basically what that question is equal to. I would say like find out like what does your soul, heart, whatever you want to, what does it want? It doesn't always, if you're seeking attention, right? And so like I gotta be a YouTuber. That doesn't necessarily mean that's what you're craving. Maybe you're just craving the ability to make people laugh or
Mhm.
smile or change up. So I just say like try to hone in and find out what it is you want, what it is you really, really, really want. And you do it for free or you do it for dirt cheap. If somebody's like, you can do this, but you're going to live in a studio apartment for the rest of your life. And you're like, that's totally fine. Find it. Feel like most people they scramble too much and they try to grab too many things. But if you find the first piece, it then leads to the next piece, the next piece. And then just accept the fact that it will suck, but it will be worth it at the same time, as long as you don't give up. And my gosh, do not listen to people. They have a million opinions about what you're doing. Everybody's got a little input, and 99% of them are coming from a place of fear because they didn't do jack and they were afraid to try it. So, man, go fail, 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 fail. Try what you can do. At the end of the day, you're not going to die. And if you want to give up after trying stuff, you can always go get that one job or whatever. It's always going to be there, but you only have certain windows of like your passions, before they dry up unless you feed them.
Well, Chad, I want to thank you
Mm,
so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise, the challenge. You're inspiring so many
absolutely.
people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Man, thank you for having me on, Alex. This was fun. Hopefully something made sense.